Good morning, all. What is it? Monday, 8:30. So, yeah, interesting experience. Saturday at 4, I went over there. There were 7 of us participating and 4 facilitators, so 11 people altogether. It is, it's not like a full clinical kind of setting, so it's definitely more geared around a spiritual kind of perspective. It's so it's a natural psilocybin, so straight from the mushroom, and they, do all the measuring, and they have a conversation. We all had one-on-one conversations before going into it, talking about our intentions and expectations and any anxiety, blah blah blah. And so there's a dialogue that happens that they then determine the dose that you'll get, because you wouldn't put everybody on the same dose. I guess you would in a clinical trial. So, the interesting part was, we all got there by 4. We weren't dosing until 9:15. So there was a lot of time kind of getting to know the people in the group and sharing intentions and some kind of spiritual kind of I would say spiritual, but just generally we all moved outside to this big, huge tent. And, so there was a lot of grounding, a lot of just checking in. And so we didn't drink the tea until 9:15. I'd say within a half hour, it was coming on. It was, I wasn't too nervous about it because I've never really had a bad experience on psilocybin before. But, there's definitely some anxiety of being, in an interesting environment and not knowing what to expect. But, I'd say the main effects probably last 2.5, 3 hours. You definitely feel it throughout the rest of the night and into the morning, but the main bit is 2.5, 3 hours. And I would say, let's call it 3 hours. I'd say 2 hours of it was super, super amazing, and just felt a lot of joy and a lot of bliss, and, very psychedelic as well. But it was all just, it felt really, really good. And then later, as things were settling down a bit more, was kind of sitting, but there was a big bonfire. We were able to kind of sit around that or stay in the tent or go in the house or whatever. So I was sitting around the bonfire for a while and some other people, and everyone's it's not like at a party or a festival where you're doing a ton of talking with people. Everyone's having their own experience. There were definitely places set aside if people wanted to talk to each other or to the facilitators. Or later in the evening, it became a little more like people would chat about some things. But anyway, as I was kind of sitting around the fire, I did go through this phase of racing thoughts. I really wanted to talk to people, and I really wanted to have some kind of connected experience. And I wasn't reaching out to people. There was only a few, but a few people knew each other or had been on the thing before. So I got into my head that everybody was socializing except for me. It wasn't too traumatizing. It was more just I couldn't get the thought out of my head. Eventually, went back to the tent to lie down. Sleep, not really, but kind of, I guess. And then we were up around 8 a.m. We sat around a table for about an hour and a half, kind of processing and reintegrating. So, yeah, I mean, in essence, what I got out of it, like in this kind of setting, as opposed to the times I've done it in the past, it became very clear to me that the effect for me was very akin to like sitting a really long meditation retreat. You know, and that they both, there is a sense of things just kind of like being pulled back and stripped away, and, you know, that just calm sense of who you are, and to be aware of things without having them like trigger you or anything like that. That happens to me on like long 7, 10 days plus meditation retreats as a culmination effect. And it was very similar. That was kind of what I experienced, you know, as I thought about it and focused on in a more like treatment setting. That's what I got out of mushrooms, and albeit with the psychedelic part added in, and you kind of you get that sense of I guess conscious awareness in a space of 2 to 3 hours, as opposed to like spending 2 weeks meditating and then having it. On the flip side, I think like the effects, probably the research I'm doing as well as it's used for treat depression and things like that, the effects hold up for 2 to 3 weeks and they start to kind of diminish on psilocybin. Whereas I think my work in meditation, because there's more efforting and there's more consistency of practice or whatever, that I feel like the impacts, they're not as acute, but they definitely last longer. So I don't know. And then obviously if you microdosed or you did these sessions every 5-6 weeks or something, that would be a whole nother, you know, thing to consider, I guess, but just kind of one-offs. Yeah, I got the opportunity, I think, to see like, to really experience joy and how amazing existence can be without like the cognitive overlay of me and mine and I. And then there was a period of time later in the evening where I really experienced what that was like, you know, and that like no one's talking to me and what's going on or whatever. So it was almost like I got to experience the freedom from all of that. And then I was reminded for about an hour of like how much suffering or how much shit I go through with those kind of thoughts around like self-worth, self-esteem, or like wanting to be seen and things like that. So in that sense, it was really interesting to have like both experience right next to each other, because in some ways, you know, I guess the question I set for myself, can I welcome both of those equally? Can I not preference the joy, the bliss? Because I think in like preferencing or craving like all that good stuff and pushing away the stuff that we don't like, I think that perpetuates the cycle of it. So for me, the question became, can I not just sit with like these uncomfortable thoughts, but can I like treat them exactly the same way that I was treating like the psychedelic bliss, you know, an hour or two before? And the short answer is not really, but I think that intention is the important thing. Like my intention is to like welcome or be with anxiety and different thoughts in the same way that I would welcome and be with feeling at ease and things going really well. Because in that, I think, that pushing away or that craving is a lot less. And so I feel like ultimately, it's not about the thing, it's not about the thoughts, it's about my relationship to them. So anyway, so I got home around 10 a.m., kind of vegetated most of the day and ate, because I didn't really eat too much leading up to the thing. Was able to process some with Jeff, which was cool, and yeah, just hang out. It was a nice day. Was able to cuddle with Mandy, nothing like cuddling with your animal when you're coming down. People were interesting. Nothing too wild and wacky, but I definitely, if you're doing it in a group setting like that, I guess obviously who you're with could be really interesting. I think out of 7 of us, 2 people, maybe 3, basically stayed in the tent, like lying down. I don't think anyone had a super difficult time, but definitely some people were processing or seeing some things. And I do think like my meditation practice, I feel like this treatment is really good to show people things like maybe they're unaware of or they don't see in a certain way. And then like how you work with that, I think is where the, a lot of benefit can come from. Which is not to say I don't have anything to look at, but I think I've been looking at those things through meditation, some other things in therapy. And so there's nothing that I imagine would show up in a psilocybin session for me that would be totally shocking, surprising, and therefore scary. I'm pretty aware of those things, but I definitely think that can be a big part of it for some folks who've never done anything like that before and are just kind of beginning to like look at themselves internally a little bit more. I did feel like the post-session integration wasn't super helpful, as you can imagine, people were just kind of talking about their experience, and it was talking in a way that was, supportive and enlightening, but it wasn't therapeutic, I don't think. And that's what I'm doing research on, is you can't really do therapy while someone is doing a psychedelic. So all the work is done leading up to it, and all the work is done afterwards. So if and when I decide to work in this field, like what are best practices when you're preparing people and you're providing psychoeducation about the thing, so the sessions that happened before, how do you support people in the moment, which is less about therapy and more just about like being there and, like holding their hands, and, if they're having a difficult time, how you handle that. That's, I guess, a part of it. I don't know if I'm super interested in doing that part, but definitely the kind of the post-session integration and helping people process their experiences. And then, how can they work with that? Because I think a lot of people do psychedelics, psilocybin in particular, and they think it's a magic bullet. And all the research shows that it's not. That the best thing that can happen is, you open up these neural pathways and you have this neuroplasticity that can come about, kind of opportunity for new growth and understanding after a session. But nothing really will get, regrow or new pathways unless there's like some direct intervention. So one therapy model that seems to be used a lot in the research I'm doing is called acceptance and commitment therapy, which is very, very similar to mindfulness and Buddhist philosophy. So it seems to be, I've already been doing some reading, some training on it, but I think moving forward, I would get more training and be certified or whatever. And it's called ACT therapy, acceptance and commitment therapy, which is basically understanding, seeing your thoughts, clarifying your values, kind of what's important to you. And then, through different practices and awareness, things like that, like taking different actions in the world or whatever. So combining psilocybin plus ACT for people, I think could be really interesting. It was interesting to do it more in a shamanic kind of based ritual setting. It wasn't anything too woo-woo for me. And I do feel like all of that work beforehand, helps participants kind of surrender and feel at ease. And I mean, if like something wasn't great in that lead up, I imagine then dosing could be, might be anxiety inducing for some people. But Yeah, it's all about set and setting, or the terms in the field. Like set is all the internal kind of preparations, your views, your beliefs, your anxieties, your past experience, your relationship with a therapist, and then setting is obviously all the external criteria. So that's where you're doing it, the actual dosage, the integration process, all that kind of stuff. Music is, in all clinical trials, they use music. You would think they don't put people in like stark lab rooms. They have lighting and plants, and they kind of create almost, even a clinical setting, all the administration of the psilocybin is done in like more of a spiritual, ritualistic kind of environment. So that's interesting. Doing more research on it this morning. But yeah, I mean, I think it's with anything, like with the right person in charge of it and people doing it and dosage and awareness, I think it's incredibly valuable. And like with anything, particularly in America, as it comes to pharmaceuticals and things like that, it's like with everything, people are gonna, like, even with mindfulness now, people have taken it and they're using the tools to kind of like spiritually bypass the actual work. And that's definitely probably no different from the psychedelic assisted therapy. There was a sense of that going on already in the sessions that I was in, and like how people process afterwards and how that's supported. So, but yeah, I mean, it was a great experience. I don't think it's the exact experience that people should or could have in a more clinical therapeutic setting, but it's pretty close. And I think, to do this work as a therapist moving forward, I think it's imperative to have experienced it. So that's definitely something that was motivating me to do it.